I built my own power plant. Let's make something that's powerful enough to actually cross into the hazardous threshold. Let's see if I can actually build something that can store a usable amount of electricity from scratch. If you've ever had that moment on a Sunday night where you're just dreading work on Monday, you're not alone. A lot of people end up on a path they choose when they are young, and years later, it doesn't really fit anymore. The problem is, once you're working full-time, changing direction can feel impossible, like you're locked in. I went through this in my 20s, realizing I was putting all my real energy into things I did after work, and almost none into my actual job. That contrast was a wake-up call to push me to slowly start investing more time to what actually excited me and see what that could lead to. The reality is, it's never too late to start building towards something different. That's where today's video sponsor, Southern New Hampshire University, can help. SNHU is one of the largest accredited universities in the United States with some of the most affordable online tuition rates in the nation. And their programs are designed for people who already have busy lives. There are no set class times, and you can work on a degree when and where it works for you. And you can do it at your own pace, even with a busy schedule. With SNHU, you can gain real-world experience to make yourself really stand out, and you can transfer up to 90 credits towards bachelor degrees for military or experiential credits, which can save a lot of time and money. For me, a program like SNHU's Business Administration degree stands out because it would directly help support managing and growing projects like this one while leaving the door open for entirely new paths. SNHU has over 200 degree programs and has been voted one of the country's most innovative universities by US News and World Report. If you're feeling stuck and need a moment to restart or see what's next in your career, this is your sign. Go to snhu.edu/htme to explore their programs and find your path forward. Thanks again to SNHU for sponsoring today's video. Previously, I explored lead-acid batteries with a generator in one of my videos experimenting with projects from the anime Dr. Stone. However, the many forms of generators that I attempted were ultimately pretty ineffective, but the lead-acid batteries that I made did hold some promise. Since then, I've turned to more historical models for power generation, with a rough recreation of one of the first industrial models. Getting it to yield an actual high and consistent amount of power has been challenging. And since that video, we've been experimenting and tweaking to improve it. Since the video with the power plant, I had a lot of suggestions and have kind of been slowly working through a lot of them and troubleshooting and trying to get a better idea how to improve this generator. Some of the kind of simple, straightforward ones I've done is adding extra metal to the sides to help contain the magnetic flux. I upgrade the commutator to make it perfectly smooth. I also use graphite rods that are held on with springs that should provide a stronger and more stable connection. And then also added some gearing so we can hand crank it with a lot more RPMs. But then some of the other improvements are kind of inventions we're going to have to figure out how to build from scratch. Things like diodes, capacitors, resistors, and things are all things I don't actually fully understand. So I don't know a ton about electrical engineering. So I think I'm going to be doing a series of shorts exploring how to make the early forms of a lot of these components and how to utilize them. But even worst case scenario, this generator was able to get up to 3 volts with just hand crank, which is actually perfect for charging up a lead acid battery. We actually want 3 volts and the amperage can be pretty low and we can kind of do a slow trickle charge. Even without any improvements, should be strong enough to power up a single battery. And then we can actually use that battery to power the stator magnets and kind of amplify it. And we can kind of bootstrap our way up to higher voltages. Some rough math says that at worst case, I'm looking at least 50 hours to charge a single cell with my generator. And while adding them back to power the stator of the generator does improve our output, I'm not sure the discharge rate on the cells and how that would all work out. But with a goal of 24 batteries in the array, worst case, we are looking at charging each cell one at a time over the course of 50 straight days of cranking the generator. Which if we had connected it to like a windmill or water wheel, would not really be too labor intensive to achieve. But to make things a little bit easier and straightforward, I'll replicate the charge I can generate with the DC power supply and charge things a little bit easierly. So ultimately the goal is to get a large array of these batteries so we can actually get a usable amount of electricity. Since my previous experiment with lead acid batteries, I've been able to produce better sulfuric acid. The previous coil design that I made before held some initial promise, so I experimented further by switching them to actual sulfuric acid and charging them with a few cycles to build up some lead oxide. The results were promising, but I think there's an even better option. So let's turn to history and see what the next evolution was. The lead battery works by the chemical reaction between lead and sulfuric acid. The cathode is made out of lead, while the anode is lead covered in lead dioxide. Both sides react with sulfuric acid to produce lead sulfate. But lead releases electrons in the process, while lead dioxide consumes electrons, thus producing a current between them. But by applying an external current to it, you can actually reverse the reaction and recharge the battery. The earliest lead battery was invented in 1859 and was very similar to my first design with 2 coiled pieces of lead. But a year later, the inventor switched to a different design, with layers of lead sheets stacked between each other. To see which method would end up working better, I made a small prototype. To form the lead dioxide layer on the cathode, it just needs to be charged with an outside current.
Here we go. We got power.
Cycling it over a dozen times helps to build up a strong layer. Testing it out, this holds even better promise than my previous batteries. But there is an even better design. It was invented in 1881 using a paste of lead. This is basically the modern system used even today in lead acid batteries, but it's a bit harder to recreate by hand. The design requires a lead grid, something kind of complicated to try and produce by hand in mass. I experimented with a few ways to form the grid and was able to make a small test sample, but it was just too laborious to try and make an entire array out of them. So for my array, I took one step back to these stacked layers. So starting from some lead sheets, I cut out all of the different layers. I used 1 32nds of an inch for the negative and 3 32nds of an inch for the positive. Then the next challenge is some form of insulation between them to space them out and keep them from touching. For this, I need something that's acid resistant that I can use to keep them evenly spaced while allowing a free flow of electrons between each plate. An obvious choice is glass. Historically, what they used was rubber, but for the quantity I'm making, I turned to a 3D printer. For the material though, polypropylene holds the best promise for acid resistance, but it comes with extra challenges to actually print. My first couple attempts started out good, but then they would fall off and turn into a mess of spaghetti. Eventually I found a layer of polypropylene on the build plate is what works best, and most packaging tape is made from polypropylene, so you just need to put a layer of tape on the bed before each print. Prussia was actually able to send me the proper build plate for polypropylene, and that produced some even better results. So thanks to them for that. Now I just need to make 192 of these. The lead sheets cut out and my insulators printed, you can now assemble them and put them into jars. Each side of each piece of lead is roughened up with a wire brush, increasing the surface area on them and hopefully allowing a higher amperage per cell. Next is to fill it with sulfuric acid. Once that's all set, it's just a matter of applying power to them to build up the lead dioxide. Then if I'm able to repeat the process of charging and discharging it at least a couple dozen times, I should hopefully be able to build up a really powerful battery. So after a lot of work of getting all the elements and then arranging them, it's been several months now of just cycling these batteries to slowly build up the oxide on the plate. In theory, the more cycles you give it, the more capacity it'll have. And I've been kind of slowly doing that, charging them up, discharging them with a light bulb, and then recharging them using an actual power supply. And things were going really good. And I was even able to get some nice sparks off of it. My highest readings off of this were a little over 50 volts, which is actually the threshold for when things start to get a little bit dangerous. So that's when it's able to overcome the resistance of your flesh. So especially if your hands are wet or anything, this could potentially kill you. I think there's a small but real possibility that this could actually kill somebody. This thing is quite heavy, so I think you're more likely to fall on this. It's also full of sulfuric acid, and then it also, when it overcharges, it releases hydrogen, so could explode. This battery, super safe. Been several months just cycling, recycling, and trying to build it up, and things were going really good for a while, and then suddenly it just kind of died. It seems like the best solution is to just kind of give it a shake. Sulfates that can build up and kind of cause shorts on all the connectors. Oxides will build up there and prevent connections. Surprisingly finicky. After doing a little bit more troubleshooting, I found that the issue was the connectors between everything. And once I put a bunch of alligator clips and reconnected them all through that, it's now up and running again, at least for now. The issue seems to be the fumes for the sulfuric acid, which is reacting with any connectors and causing them to corrode. I was using lead wire to connect all of them, which is non-reactive to the actual sulfuric acid. However, it still forms the lead dioxide, which apparently can interfere with the connection between them. The main issue I'm running into now is kind of a design flaw in the way I designed this, that I need to find a way to seal everything so that the sulfuric acid fumes will not react with the connectors. I kind of intentionally left everything open so I could adjust and tweak things as I get this set up, reevaluating my design and figuring out a good solution for that. But this guy should be able to give a very nice amount of voltage. I've been able to light up a few different incandescent light bulbs, which is surprisingly impressive. I've been able to light up LEDs since Baghdad battery. It's very slight, and I think that's more saying the kind of impressiveness of LEDs and just how little power they actually require. Kind of a modern marvel. Early light bulbs require a lot more power. I have melted a few wires doing this. One of the big goals for this is actually to build some of the predecessors to the light bulb and then the light bulb itself. So the reason I picked this amount of batteries, kind of the minimum to hopefully do an arc lamp. And I've been testing that with a few different carbon rods, been able to get very bright sparks. I think I'm gonna need to work on building my own components to get something a little bit more sustained form of lighting. With this battery, it should be possible to do a wide variety of things. I think we could even weld small pieces of metal. And I think I've actually done that, just connecting things. Hot spark that fuses metal together. We are getting pretty high in our electrical potentials. Still some refinements we can do on this to kind of improve it, range of different ways, make it a little less finicky. This should really open the door for more useful electrical abilities. So I think when everything is working perfectly correct, we're looking at a little over 50 volts and around 1 to 2 amps. Amps seem to be very inconsistent, struggling to get a good consistent charge on those, but I think fully optimized, it should get up to 2 amps. I think the only next technological improvement that can be made to this is to use the paste batteries, which are basically what we use today. And it's the exact same setup, except these lead sheets are grids, and they are able to put the lead oxide directly onto it as a paste. That allows much more surface area. It allows you to have a much higher amperage from each cell. I weighed trying to do that, but just trying to get a couple was very complicated. I did a few tests. For my primary goal of getting an arc lamp and a light bulb powered, I think we got it. Yeah, so I think we can start doing some more experiments with the electricity from this and actually start putting it to use. I think this is ultimately pretty exciting. Just like the levels of power we've had before have been surprisingly low. It's been a ton of work and a ton of metal resources to make batteries that are not that powerful. But this guy, we're actually starting to get somewhere. And I think fully optimized, this is maybe a quarter of a third of a modern car battery, which I think is kind of impressive for being able to put it all together myself. Pretty excited to see what else we can do with this. Let's start making some lights. These electrical projects are always kind of a pain, always running into more issues than I expect. I thought this one was gonna be really straightforward, but once again, lots of issues, lots of challenges, lots of having to troubleshoot it or reconfigure it. Anybody has suggestions or ways to improve this, feel free to put them in the comments. Thank you to all my supporters on Patreon, and thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and check out other content we have covering a wide variety of topics. Also, if you've enjoyed these series, consider supporting us on Patreon. We are largely a fan-funded channel and depend on the support of our viewers in order to keep our series going. Thanks for watching.